It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman here with Cindy Black, the Executive Director here at Redeemer Radio for Theology of the Body Thursday. Thanks for being here, Cindy.
Absolutely great to be.
What do you have for us today?
Well, last week I was listening when you had Miriam in with Andrea being on vacation. And during one of the segments, you spoke about the healing services that Father Ben and Father Drew are doing. I don't remember how it kind of came about, but Miriam did experience one at St. Elizabeth.
Right.
And it was so fun to listen to you talk about it. But then I thought some of the language might be scary for people if they're not familiar with that.
Okay.
Like the whole notion of like falling over.
Yeah.
And when Miriam shared there was a mom holding a toddler and she just fell over. It's when I envision somebody falling over, it's like a pretty forceful kind of thing.
Yeah.
But most of the time, most of my experience with seeing people in those prayer settings, it's more of a resting in the Spirit.
Okay.
There can be like a struggle that's happening within that people can like rest in the Spirit, and then it's kind of like a grappling with something. But oftentimes it's a very peaceful resting. So being overcome with God's love and goodness sometimes is just so overpowering that it can like defy our ability to control our bodies for a moment. So it generally is a very restful thing. And actually, as they've been going around, because people rest in the Spirit, they do usually have people prepared to help make sure that somebody lays down gently and that they're covered up. So, like a woman's shirt isn't going to be up where you can see, her midsection and stuff like that. So there are people stationed that have experience and are there to help make the experience as beautiful as possible for the person that was prayed over.
So how would you differentiate that from somebody who passes out either from extreme exhaustion or some kind of oxygen?
Right. So interestingly enough, I have experienced both.
Okay.
Several times. So sometimes my blood sugar gets really low and I literally faint. That is when I can usually tell that it's coming on. Sometimes it's too late for me to really stop it, but my vision starts getting closed in, my ears become muffled, and then I black out. And
for how long?
Usually just I actually don't know. I don't think very long.
Okay.
But it once happened up in the convent in Mishawaka where I went to the mass, which, I mean, most of the people at the time were like 20 and 30 years older than me. And I thought, how ironic that I'm the one leaving in a wheelchair. But it was during the Our Father, and I think the kneeling and the standing and the kneeling and the standing, and my blood sugar was low. Everything just kind of turned black. And the next thing I knew, they had me in a wheelchair and were giving me orange juice. And as soon as I drank the orange juice, within I don't know how long, but quickly I felt much better and very embarrassed. But resting in the Spirit is different. At least this has been my experience.
Okay.
I did not want to rest in the Spirit. I thought, I don't need that. I even told God before I went up there, you know what? I can experience you without that. So
save it for somebody that needs it.
Yes. And so it was a religious sister who happened to be praying over me. And the words she was speaking were so beautiful. And I got this glimpse of God looking at me with this deep love. I felt this flooding of God's love in such a way. It was so bright, but yet so beautiful. And all of a sudden I knew, I couldn't, I don't know, all of a sudden I knew that I was falling backwards, but I couldn't stop it, or I didn't want to stop it. It was just like the most peaceful. I felt light. And I laid there. Everyone made sure I was fine. And I laid there and I just felt such peace that I didn't want it to ever end. Like I felt like it was a foretaste of heaven. Like I had just pure, good, loving thought. Like it just like overcame me. So I have prayed for people to receive what God has for them during these prayer services. And I have seen people who are grappling with something. I remember one instance where one of my friends who was fairly recently widowed, and she just trembled and shook. But she even shared when she got up that it was such a deep encounter with God, but it was a very different kind of encounter.
So with Theology of the Body, this is kind of a good example of this. This is God interacting with the body in a unique way. Why do you think that God uses this form of resting in the Spirit as, would you call it a way of communicating, a way of inspiring, or what is the purpose of it?
Yeah, it is. He created us as an integrated body and soul. So he wants us to experience him bodily and through our soul. So both dimensions. And that's why, the Catholic faith is so beautiful, because there's this richness of the bodily experiences, the eating Jesus's flesh and blood, the incense used, the postures that we have during worship and things like that. God wants to use everything that he created in us. He wants to be united to him, and that we're made for that. So we have a longing for that. And I think the more we understand this integration, the better for us. And that's why I think, there's something rising up in our diocese that is so beautiful with, I think of like kingdom builders, and I think of Father Drew and Father Ben leading these prayer services, and things happening across the board. Like tomorrow night, there will be a prayer service at our, I won't say landlords, but our host parish in South Bend. So at Little Flower, there will be one of these prayer services. And I'd really encourage people to go experience it. Go with an open heart and open mind, and just say, okay, Lord, I just want to know more about this, more about you through this experience. And these type of prayer experiences really do get at the fact that, and Unbound is also based on the fact that throughout Scripture, the Old Testament and the New, there are two paths placed before us. The path of God, which is light, life, peace, joy, communion, or the path of the enemy, who wants to rob those things from us, who wants to steal and take us down with him. And so these prayer experiences really do lay out God's response to the enemy in trying to lead the free will that he gave us to choose him. He gives us these experiences so that we know what we're choosing to choose him. And really, if you look through like the Acts of the Apostles, and even in several of the Gospels, when Jesus sends the disciples out, like the 72 out, he sends them out to heal and to drive out demons. And let me just find his exact words. In Luke, it says the 72 returned rejoicing and said, Lord, even the demons are subject to us because of your name. Jesus said, I have observed Satan falling like lightning from the sky. Behold, I have given you the power to tread upon serpents and scorpions, and upon the full force of the enemy, and nothing will harm you. So he wants to give us this power of healing, this power to drive out those demons. He gives us the power to overcome the illnesses that we face.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that I say that, grace builds upon nature, but nature does have effects on our spiritual life. So I'm not saying that I'm not anti-medicine and things like that when I say this, but I do believe that God wants to give us more healing through prayer than we are currently receiving oftentimes in our daily lives. I know I went through most of my life never really experiencing anxiety, and I have a friend who did, and I couldn't really relate to her experience because I hadn't, it had never really impacted me physically before. And when I did start experiencing the physical effects of anxiety, I didn't even know that that's what it was from. And the way that I knew that it had gone to a completely different level that I couldn't really overcome myself is that I was not able to pray it away. So that's when the physiological effects had taken over. Now, perhaps, cognitive behavioral therapy, retraining my thoughts would have helped, but I wasn't functioning very well in the jobs that I had to do. So I tried medication, and that really helped. I could tell that it was working when I could then pray when I felt worry and things like that. But prior to that, I couldn't really even pray.
Is this prayer something that we can do ourselves, or does it have to be done with somebody else praying over us or for us?
It absolutely can be done by us. I would say that, many of us don't really have, we haven't really learned to pray that way.
Okay.
So it is good. And also we know Jesus tells us where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am.
Sure.
I think that having more than ourselves, it's more difficult to be deceived by the evil one. There's greater chance of recognizing what's of God and, what the enemy's trying to steal from us. So I would encourage people to learn more and to really be open to this and not think, oh, this isn't something I need in my life, because this is one of the tools that Jesus gave us that really has the power to evangelize.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned, which we're not going to be able to get into today, you just kind of briefly went over the word unbound. Hopefully, maybe we can do a whole thing on this, but if people want to learn more about that, where would you go to learn more about unbound?
Well, St. Vincent's Fort Wayne is doing a 4-part series on Unbound on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9. There also are 2 really good books, and I can't think of the author's name right now. But if you just Google Unbound, you'll see the books.
I'll put links to those then in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe we can tackle that in more completeness in the future. So thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it.